The first celestial to ever set foot on the Earth did so 4 billion years ago, when this world was still a thoroughly insignificant speck of molten mud. Insignificant and utterly lifeless. The celestial came not because of some grand cosmic design or godly destiny. It never even consciously chose this world. It came merely because it fell. And it fell because it was dying. Turns out even an omnipotent space god gets sick now and again, and this one had just come down with quite the nasty infection. It fell through space for many years before it landed in the muck of Earth, when it vomited and bled and wept radioactive tears, and then slumped over and died. Tell me, why has this one particular, otherwise unremarkable world always been such a hotbed for superpowered madness? Why is the Earth so uniquely eccentric within the near infinite number of planets strewn across the heavens? Why indeed? Not because of any grand purpose, I assure you, but because of that bubbling black puddle of celestial regurgitation and the monstrous things that would come slithering out of it. Any guesses as to what those monsters were? They were you. Yes, you and all your mutated, gamma-radiated, web-slinging ilk. And this is who you have to thank. The progenitor. The origin of the world as you know it. The god who died so you might live. And welcome back to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Multiverse.
Forgot where we were for a second there.
I know, I guess so. You lost within the multiverse.
That was Earth 683, Flonzo.
683. Great sunsets in 683.
Terrible fast food.
Terrible, terrible fast food. Come and Chow is not nearly as good as In-N-Out.
Come and Chow. Very good. I like it.
I did not. So anyway, what did you think of that whole grand reveal that Loki gave there?
It was fascinating, man. Again, kind of speaking more candidly, like I'm so much less familiar with the like birth of the current Marvel universe and some of these things, and so it's cool to see kind of this like very thespianistic explanation of, you know, the reason why y'all exist is because of this death plague.
Yeah.
You are corpse juice.
Well, and I feel like that is a very, like, 2018 take, which I will say, if there's, like, a theme I learned when researching for this episode, it is how many retcons there have been to so many of these characters.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
We, last week when we recorded the Galactus episode, you had mentioned the kind of space plague that impacted and was destroying the multiple universes. Is this the same disease that this celestial catches before he comes to Earth?
He doesn't, actually. This is a plague caused by another group of world eaters, sort of a species that sort of evolved to feed off of planets, that then encountered this celestial and had spread to that.
Dang. So, Flonzo, before we get too deep into the muck and the mire,
yeah,
what are we talking about today?
So today we are talking about not necessarily the 4 billion years ago you see here, but 1 million years ago for the first ever team of Avengers 1 million BC.
Woo. Prehistoric Avengers.
Prehistoric Avengers. And I mean, speaking of prehistoric, we see here this original celestial, this progenitor landing in, world of 4 billion years ago. This is pretty early in the Earth's history period, and also about when life scientists, give or take however many hundreds of millions of years, do think life started.
Like in our current real world.
Yeah, in our current, whatever world we decide to number this one. But yeah, they do think life did start around this 4 billion years ago point. So there is some historical accuracy, and also sort of the molten mud of that world is about what the Earth did look like.
Yeah, that's some fun little research they must have done to create that tie-in. That's cool.
Absolutely. I think it was super historically accurate, at least in terms of the 4 billion BC stuff. I think Jason Aaron, who wrote this, he was kind of intentionally, sort of for campy reasons, aware that he was being historically inaccurate with some of the stuff in this. But later writers have gone back and retconned a lot of things to, use time travel to explain things to make 1 million BC more historically accurate, at least to our world. That says, when it comes to the 4 billion BC stuff, he totally nails the historical accuracy there.
What were your reference materials? The fossil record.
Just staring at a mountain, doing my research. And speaking of research, I also found that a lot of people were talking that about this time, another being was created called the Demiurge. Have you ever heard of this being?
I'm not familiar, no.
So the Demiurge is sort of like the Earth's potential for life, given its own sort of godly form.
Sure.
And then the Demiurge, in turn, gave birth to the Elder Gods.
Like the Elder Gods as we know them, non-Marvel?
Some of them we know, such as, have you ever heard of the goddess Gaia?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
In fact, you might have even read a thing or two about her before we did this episode.
Possibly.
So for those of you who aren't familiar, Gaia, I believe, was initially a Titan in Greek mythology, and also gained a lot of following around the 70s within our universe as like sort of a worship of the Earth as Gaia.
Real Mother Earth figure.
Exactly. So within the context of Marvel Comics, the Demiurge created the Elder Gods, most of which are sort of evil, not quite Lovecraftian, because there are some gods who better fit that, but most of those gods who survived went on to become sort of these grand demonic forces.
Are there other like anchor points that you could point to of these Elder Gods? Like who else would be familiar for listeners?
Well, the two main ones that we're going to be talking about today are kind of the only two who are really good people. There is Gaia, who I just talked about, and also Oshtur, who, well, we'll get to in a little bit, gave birth to the first Sorcerer Supreme, at least according to sort of a legend within the Marvel Universe.
Very cool.
Yeah, there were two others. One whose name I cannot pronounce off the top of my head, but I think it's something like Churton.
Okay.
Who played other roles, not really as significant. There's also Set, who's famous. He's kind of the evil god within ancient Egyptian mythology, and he also went on to play a lot of roles in the Marvel Universe, created the Serpent Men that Conan fought, a lot of other places like that.
Right on. That's right. Conan is indeed a Marvel character.
He is. We're, we are still before Conan times even, right here.
Old.
In fact, like, at least within the context of our world, there weren't even humans in 1 million BC.
Right.
This is around the time of, like, Homo erectus and Homo ancestor, I think is how you pronounce that. So, I mean, this is like humans are just barely starting to stand up, right? As we're fast forwarding to 1 million BC. So as we're jumping ahead to 1 million BC, probably a good time to kind of explain how we're picking a lot of these episodes. For those of you who are familiar with the Battle World and the Secret War series from 2018, Battle World was sort of assembled from bits and pieces of lots of different universes, most of which pointed back to major events in Marvel Comics. So we're going to be doing a lot of things on this podcast, but a lot of these episodes are going to be rooted in some of those areas of Battle World. And what I wanted to focus on for this episode was the Isle of Agamotto. And are you familiar with Agamotto before you did any of this at all?
Other than there was a thing, the Eye of Agamotto, because I played a lot of Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
Yeah, and actually something that I had learned in doing research is apparently there are 3 eyes or amulets or however you want to look at those for the 3 major journeys Agamotto had done. And he's a character, I kind of picked this, the 1 million BC, because I feel like this is one of the only kind of the stories related to this group of Avengers a million and 2,000 years before our day now. Was probably the most actual dealing with him as a character and not just the repercussions of everything that he did over the millions of years he was the Sorcerer Supreme.
The original Sorcerer Supreme.
The OG Sorcerer Supreme. So, yeah, like I mentioned, he was born out of a teardrop of Ashtar as she saw a blind kid playing hide and seek with a couple of other kids.
That's touching.
It really
That is strangely touching.
Yeah, she saw that. She had a tear, and within that tear is supposedly Agamotto. Again, that's just a legend in Earth. And even like how old Agamotto is kind of disputed.
Disputed between
just various sources. I think I've been kind of touching on a comic. I don't even know if you could call it a comic. It's almost presented more like it's a collage called Marvel Tarot. That kind of hints that he was born in 25,000 BC. So some people online are like, oh, he was actually born then. He time traveled. But he's done so many legendary things that so much of his path is hidden in sort of myth.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that's sort of why we chose this topic for our second ever podcast. Kind of touched a little bit on what 1 million BC looks like, right? We've got the Homo erectus, man starting to walk upright.
Yeah.
Solidly in the Ice Age.
Yeah.
You may notice there are a lot of regular humans walking around.
Interesting.
Just get a soundboard of like all your responses. Interesting. Cool. Wow.
Wow. Neat.
Psychedelic. Can I use the bathroom?
Can I have more tea?
So I think part of his inspiration when they were originally making this comic, which is written by John Aaron, I think he was heavily influenced by the idea. Have you ever heard of like the old like 40s movie? The original UK version was called 1 Million Years BC, and then there was a separate American version called 1 Million BC.
I haven't.
Yeah, it's I think from just what I know, I think it is kind of the original like perpetrator of that idea of like cavemen living alongside dinosaurs, because that's very much what those movies are about. And it's like 1940s original claymation, so you got to think like
that's Ray Harryhausen type stuff.
Exactly, yeah. But still, yeah, the kids who grew up with that ended up later going on to do the Flintstones, ended up raising us with that idea of cave people. Yep. So here we have a story about the Avengers living 1 million BC, which also was retconned in terms of the humans living back then, as a bunch of people thrown back in time. So that's why there are so many humans living in this time period.
Yeah, interesting elements of society protrude.
That is very true. Yeah. Not quite the level of social commentary we saw in the Flintstones comic, which maybe we'll cover someday. It's not on the pipeline, but we'll see.
All right, Flonzo. So I'm curious to know and start kind of diving into the who's who of the prehistoric Avengers. So initially, we see, a baby. We quickly learn is Phoenix. And earlier I had alluded to like elements of society protruding, right? Like this is so Trojan, the fact that they have this anomalous child that they go and leave in what is like a burnt brush, right? They leave it so that it gets picked apart by the wolves, vultures, take it from there, Flonzo. Who is Phoenix in this context?
Yeah, well, we are getting into right now Avengers number 39, which is the origin of the Phoenix 1 million BC. And so this was a child that was outcast for being born with red hair, which it makes a lot more sense to have a redheaded white child that far back if you think about the time traveling.
Yeah, it doesn't fit with the proto-caveman, though.
It is definitely like, this does not look like a Homo erectus child. There is way too little fur for that. But yeah, so they have this child that's born with red hair, so it's automatically outcast from society, just left out to die, being picked apart by vultures in this, ever burnt ruins of a landscape.
But she doesn't die.
She does not die. She is, in fact, saved by and raised by wolves.
Yeah, which is kind of a cool series of panels because it shows her like assimilating into their society and kind of running with the pack, and it's showing this sense of family that I think is really important to Jean, of being in the group.
Oh, I'm loving that analysis there. Because, yeah, you'll see her form her own pack a little later on here.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, one thing that I thought was kind of interesting, maybe I did do a little bit too much anthropological research when doing this.
Oh, you behave. Calm down, Flo.
I'm sorry, I'm trying not to turn all the listeners on with this, but we see her carrying two separate weapons, a spear and like a little actual accurate to something that Homo erectus did have as a sharpened stone. Essentially, they kind of call them like hand axes.
Interesting.
So, as much as this is sort of a cheesy stereotype of like, oh, even though she's raised with wolves, she develops clothing and more advanced weaponry than did exist at the time. I was kind of surprised to realize that even our earliest, barely being able to walk without using their hands ancestors were using these kind of simple tools.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to like what we were talking about earlier, where there's like some key reference points here that are linked to reality.
Yeah.
Which is like the hallmark of a fun story. Like, that's great. Like, oh, hey.
Well, and I do love that. I think that is something, a lot of modern superhero comics don't do, is make you feel like it's the world outside your...
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that's good to tie us in. Anyways, speaking of being tied in, so this redheaded young girl comes across a cyclops of sorts.
A baby with a single eye.
Yeah, a more literal cyclops than this Marvel cyclops many of us are used to.
Yeah.
Which I think might go back to what we were talking about last episode, that almost the spirit of the X-Men were embedded in the sort of dust of the fabric of this very multiverse, which is much too confusing to explain in this podcast alone, but we see these X-Men motifs appearing early on in the Marvel history. So when she finds this one-eyed baby, suddenly a floating psychic man comes up to her.
This scene in particular was really fascinating to read because she does not have language, right? She does not know words, phrases. She doesn't know how to communicate other than through like her literal wolf pack, right? And so this floating primitive Charles Xavier shows up with beautiful, luscious, long black hair, and he starts talking to her.
Yeah. And, you got to think, like, all of this stuff is translated anyway, right? This is some ancient language, even if she did have language. But that's a great point that I hadn't thought of. That, I mean, any language she knows would have been, like, wolf language.
Right.
So what are these sort of abstract thoughts that are then being translated into words, which not everyone does think in language, even though probably for the majority of our listeners that's the case. It's something that does fascinate me, that there is a good chunk of the population, of modern society who doesn't think in language, who is making this translation that's being made automatically as he communicates to her.
Yeah, and it freaks her out.
Yeah.
She loses it.
But then does end up going back to him later and ends up finding that he's got this whole tribe that they're calling the Tribe Without Fear, which is sort of, you could say, a proto-X-Men of sorts.
Yeah. And it's great because you see this panel And I love this particular panel because it's just like beast people and this guy with like pockmarked kind of lava spots, and then just like Reed Richards.
Yeah.
He's there too.
Yeah, it's such a sort of unique superpower to have, that stretchy ability, and we're seeing this, a million BC. So some of these are mutants. Some look like they could be demons. Some look like they're satyrs.
There's a Shape of Water person.
Yeah.
Just hanging out there. Real Abe Sapien, if you will.
Yeah. Actually came from the Hellboy part of the multiverse.
The old one, before humans. But yeah, so this is like their conceptualization of the X-Men, right? It is these wandering, unwanted folk who have been more or less cast off by society.
They do say that it's multiple tribes that are sort of abandoning their outcasts in this area. So time goes on, and suddenly a group of these cavemen who found out about the tribe without fear come to kill them. And around the time this is happening, and this is something that we'll see with a lot of mutants, that there's a traumatic event that sort of kicks this redheaded Jean Grey of 1 million BC.
And this scene in particular, I think, is really an interesting analog of like early X-Men, where there's just a mob of people chasing them.
Right.
And it's angry people who don't understand that it creates this contextualization around them.
Absolutely. And it's part of what makes a mutant, people talk about the mutant metaphor, it's so poignant because it is this sort of super-powered way of explaining any sort of ostracization of a group within society.
Yeah, empathy around discrimination.
Absolutely. It makes it so that if you are someone who's persecuted, you can identify to this sort of fantasy group of, at least I could have superpowers.
Yeah, literally. Or all the emotional things I am feeling manifested.
Right. And there's the TV show Legion, I think, did that magnificently, of kind of using the mutant metaphor as a psychological metaphor as well.
Yeah. So before I interrupted you, Fonzo, you were talking about there's like a trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's like a traumatic response that often unlocks a person's mutant power. And from the sort of modern day Jean Grey, it was she saw like a childhood friend of her died in front of her. And for this version, it is when this mob of humans comes in, all of a sudden she starts reading the minds of everyone in that room. And they're trying to attack. They call him the High Walker, this Professor X of 1 million BC, because he just sort of levitates around. And so they're throwing stones and spears at him, and he's just stopping them with their mind. And suddenly this, wolf girl, this Jean Grey, 1 million BC, is, getting angry, wanting to use her powers in anger. And for a moment, the High Walker's distracted, telling her, hey, don't feel this hatred.
Yeah, he's trying to soothe her.
Exactly, which breaks his mental concentration just enough that those rocks and spears start to go through and kill him, which then unleashes the tribe without fear against them. And so she's never been inside anyone's mind before, and suddenly that's happening in this battle as people she likes, people who hate her, are suddenly killing each other. And not only the trauma of seeing that happen in front of her, but being inside the mind of everyone it's happening to as it's happening.
And all of her friends dying around her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then she leaves the cave and thinks, hey, why is this area always burned? Why has this never been healed? And as that happened, the buzzards who, tried to eat her as a baby suddenly catch on fire. And she's confronted with the Phoenix Force, who we talked about the Phoenix Force a little bit last episode, how it's this sort of force of life, all life incarnate. And it rises up and then possesses her, as is known to happen.
As one does.
Yeah, as happens to redheaded psychics, apparently. So, yeah, then the Phoenix comes to her and, everything burns once again. And as she's starting to take out her revenge, she realizes that now that she's the one with the power, she's being the buzzard. she's being the, one inflicting terror. And it's actually seeing her family member when a wolf licks her hand that she realizes, oh, now I'm the bad guy. Yeah. This isn't how I need to be. Which then brings us to the end of the comic, where we're confronted with someone who might be familiar to some Marvel readers. Jean comes to Asgard and sees Odin, who's holding on to a familiar hammer, Mjolnir, and suddenly invited to join this Phoenix of 1 million BC to form a team of sorts.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How does she travel between dimensions?
I mean, I can't say that I've ever seen this in a comic, but what I would think is that her being able to tap into all life would somehow allow the Phoenix to have knowledge of how to cross the Rainbow Bridge from Midgard to Asgard.
Yeah.
Which we do see actually in the first panel of Asgard here. We do see the Rainbow Bridge exists.
Yeah. And so why is she coming to see Odin?
Essentially, because she's putting a team together.
She's getting the band together.
A team of Earth's mightiest heroes, as it were. And who are these heroes? The Avengers of 1 million BC. So let's talk about Odin first.
Yeah.
So we already talked a little bit about him, but you ever wonder where these gods of Asgard come from?
Not only have I, but I'll tell you, Flans, I was kind of surprised to see Odin so young.
Yeah. Well, so young and so long ago.
Yeah. He's like, 30s-ish visually.
Yeah. Which, in beings that live for thousands of years, who knows how old he actually is. But yeah, he's young, and while he certainly often comes across as sort of pompous in the comics, you don't see him being so reckless.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got that young guy energy.
Yeah. We had mentioned Gaia earlier, and actually she ended up creating a being called Atum, I guess is how you'd pronounce it, or Adam, who ended up destroying most of the other evil elder gods and then flew into the sun. And supposedly his energy is what gave people's belief in God's physical form in the form of the Asgardians. That's at least the explanation that is given in Thor Annual number 10, which, like a lot of the things, especially as I'm starting to learn a lot of the more magic-based things, there have been retcons and a lot of contrarian opinions, but...
And what will come up in probably later in our discussion is there is a conversation between Jean and Gaia where Gaia does this really, I don't even know, it's not like a speech or a monologue, but the way she explains godhood and benevolence and how there are so few benevolent gods, I think is really important here as well.
Yeah. And that's the reason she destroyed a lot of the other elder gods, a lot of these other original gods of Earth, is because there were so few, really. I mean, her and Oshtar are kind of really the two big ones who were good in any way, at least in terms of, as are recorded in any of these comics.
Yeah.
And speaking of Oshtar, we talked a little about Agamotto, who's also a part of these Avengers 1 million.
These early Avengers is the OG Agamotto.
Yeah, the OG Sorcerer Supreme, as we said. And like we said, he might be a time traveler from, our distant past still, but far less distant to these guys. He's someone who's... We know all these legends from modern comics about all these things he's done, all these ancient beings he sealed away, all the, his interactions with the ancient city of Atlantis, which hasn't even been built at this time, even though there is the continent of Atlantis.
And something that I think is really interesting about the way that this particular series of stories unfolds is all of these Avengers are established in this timeline and universe, right? So kind of like Flans was describing, Agamotto may or may not be a time traveler, but he is there and he's the Sorcerer Supreme. And all of the other Avengers, which he's going to talk about, have these already like established roles and duties in the universe.
Absolutely. For example, Starbrand, who is kind of the Hulk of this group and is also the Starbrand, who is an established character within the modern Avengers, who is honestly, like, when I was looking at these, I'm like, what even is the Starbrand? Like, I did know.
Literally the question I was just going to ask. I'm like, I still don't know quite what the Star brand is.
Well, and part of what makes the Starbrand so convoluted is Starbrand actually started out. Are you familiar with the 80s New Universe?
Oof. I'm sure that there's some like reference point you could like guide me to, but not off the top of my head, no.
It was a very short left, like, fling that Marvel Comics did in the 80s where they tried creating a new universe.
Oh, sure. Okay, yes. I am familiar with this. Yeah.
And so Starbrand was one of those characters. I believe he was kind of like the more Superman-y of those characters. Okay. And how most of those characters got their powers was, it was in 80s, like we said, sort of that, world outside your window that's been Marvel's philosophy for a lot of their history. 1980s, what if just suddenly something known as the White Event occurred and a bunch of people got superpowers?
The White Event. Classic Marvel.
The White Event. Two white guys from New York trying to explain all these other cultures. Black Panther's in this group as well, speaking of which.
Yeah, and maybe the least present, but one of the most interesting.
Yeah. Just to kind of get back to Starbrand real quick before we jump into Black Panther, how they explain there being a Starbrand in the 616 universe is essentially they said the original like alien life in the planet was known as the Builders, and that they would get like have these white events to kind of create certain beings, which happen to be some of the main characters from the new universe on different planets. So that's where Starbrands come from.
Interesting.
And this particular Starbrand actually was originally a T-Rex Starbrand who had died. And then, well, this was, a cave person, certainly descended from one of those people who came back in time because he definitely was a human.
Yeah.
Speaking of white events, the white event of a bunch of modern day, not all white people, as we'll see as we get into Black Panther, but got sent back in time. Anyway, he came across, they called it the Garden of Eden. He came across the Starbrand T-Rex, ended up gaining the Starbrand from that T-Rex. Actually, very similar to the Phoenix of a million BC, he was also exiled from his tribe for being gay. So, yeah,
interesting.
A little bit more of that persecution.
Yeah, interesting. Cool.
And then, as we mentioned, we do have the Black Panther of a million BC, which is another retcon because traditionally it's been, about 10,000 years that there have been Black Panthers. This bumps that up to 1 million years ago.
Yeah. And very much in the vein of the Black Panther, he's the leader of the... they never mention Wakanda, but it's very much Wakanda.
Yeah, the Panther tribe.
The Panther tribe, yeah.
Which, if you're not familiar, there's a Panther tribe in Africa, a meteor of vibranium, which is like this radioactive metal that absorbs any kinetic energy. And also mutated some of the life around it, including the heart-shaped herb, which people can take. It gives them, really good awareness of their body, extra strength, makes their sentences stronger, gives them a little bit of a healing factor, nowhere near Wolverine's. But what made him the first Black Panther, because people had taken the heart-shaped herb before, but what makes him Black Panther is that he was actually blessed by yet another goddess named Bast, who at one point did tell him that she was an ordinary human who was turned into a goddess, assumedly from Atom's energy, however you pronounce that.
So he was bamboozled into being the Black Panther?
Well, no. She is a goddess, but that's how she became a goddess. Okay. Just to try and cram as much about the lore of the Marvel Universe into one episode of this podcast as possible.
Truly.
So, he's the first Black Panther of the Panther tribe. We also have a 1 million BC version of the Ghost Rider.
Yeah, this is such a cool visual representation of him.
Absolutely. Now,
Or her. I don't know. Do they say?
it is a him.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is a unique Ghost Rider because we know Ghost Riders, they ride on motorcycles, they might ride around in like a street racing car, but this is a Ghost Rider who rides around on a woolly mammoth.
Yeah, it's badass.
Really?
It is metal as all get out.
And, this definitely is another one of those where I thought, okay, yeah, I kind of know Ghost Rider. And then I started looking into, wait, what is the spirit of vengeance really? And I knew there were a couple different demons. And it led me down a rabbit hole that I will summarize in a way that makes more sense than some of the Marvel lore has established, that basically spirits of vengeance seem to be a type of demon, some of which serve Mephisto, who is a demon who largely plays the sort of satanic role within Marvel Comics, is probably the most, if you think of like a Satan or a Lucifer. To make things complicated, there are Satans and there are Lucifers, but the one who actually holds that role of like most evil demon lord is probably Mephisto.
Canonically in love with magic.
I actually did. Oh, magic, the New Mutant magic?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
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 Weird.
Random. I'm so sorry for just saying that.
No, don't be.
Yeah.
How many random facts am I shouting out on this podcast?
It's just what it is. It's just random facts. The random fact hour. So yeah, he rides a giant woolly mammoth, embodies the spirit of vengeance. So that's interesting table setting to consider. Then Mephisto is like an eternal being.
Yeah. And he actually is the one who directly gave this version of the Ghost Rider his powers. He took the form of a snake, and this Ghost Rider, he started out as a young boy who was like, all of his tribe had been killed by a Wendigo except for him. And he was
A Wendigo or the Wendigo?
a Wendigo.
Nice. For him.
Yeah, no, and I'm... Wendigos also have a complex history within Marvel, and apparently aren't allowed to leave the Canadian border, at least in our modern times.
I have other questions and thoughts, but this is not the time nor place. Go ahead.
I mean, feel free to ask away.
It's more general about cryptids in the Marvel universe.
If we have come up with a name for them, they probably exist within the Marvel universe.
Yeah, Mothman.
Probably.
You're like...
After conferring with the Flonzo of Universe 318, it has come to my attention that Mothman does exist in the DC universe, as well as in the Watchmen universe, but I am not sure if there's ever been a Marvel comic with the Mothman in it. And send me back to my dimension. We'll get to that. We talked.
You owe me money. Where's my money?
But yeah, so there are many cryptids within the Marvel universe, including, spirits of vengeance who are beings unto themselves. And lastly, we have the Iron Fist.
Gosh, this is... She's funny. Go ahead.
So, this Iron Fist, she's from Kunlun, which is a city that kind of exists both in Earth and another dimension at the same time. And she was kind of ostracized from, the people of Kunlun because she was leaving the city and training regular humans in martial arts. So as punishment, those humans were fed to a dragon in front of her, and then she got so angry she kind of broke loose from her chains and killed the dragon, which that is what makes someone an Iron Fist, is, when they kill these dragons.
Interesting. So I don't know a ton about Iron Fist, but it was very comical to see Odin just have zero respect for them in this comic.
True. And actually, yeah, we do have Odin's take on all of these characters. So he considers Agamotto to be infuriating. Starbrand, he says he admires his strength. Ghost Rider he refers to as a frightened boy with a devil that had once been a soul. Black Panther, he says he's the most impressive mortal he's ever met. Phoenix he refers to as a good friend, because he's talking to Thor at the time, and it was very much the way parents often talk to their children about their old friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, he said he did not like Iron Fist at all.
Yeah. Detested her.
So that's the feedback from Odin regarding these characters. And then we move on to the first showdown between the Avengers 1 million BC and a Celestial. So, Celestial named Grib the Aspirant is a lover of that first Celestial that crashed into Earth 4 billion years ago.
It's like Zagreb, right? There's a Z.
Z to a G, so Zgreb?
Z to G. Zagreb, yeah. Artistically, like, I don't know if you read into this too, but it's like, gosh, so similar to Iron Man.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, he's got like propulsors and like what looks like an arc. What is those things? The arc?
The arc reactor. I'm curious because in this very issue, there is like a god armor that Tony Stark wears to fight Celestials. And I almost wonder if maybe it was made from this Celestial's body because...
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so he was in love with the progenitor.
That's right, yeah.
So he's on his way back and he thinks that he's going to be kind of living with the progenitor on planet Earth, and I mean, of course, he finds that the Celestial is dead and decaying
from this, planet-killing disease that then spreads to Zgreb. So Zgreb is actually dying.
Very, very weakened state.
Exactly.
This person's in. They're Celestial. They're not a person.
Yeah, which actually we haven't mentioned this episode, but the Celestials are actually like the original beings from the original creation.
Yeah, the Titans, if you will.
Yeah, I mean pre-Titans, because Titans do exist in this universe too. Yeah. But yeah, so in this sort of weakened state, this group of mortals and gods and other such empowered beings is able to defeat this first Celestial that they encounter. The next time we see the Avengers 1 million BC, they're preparing for another battle against Celestials.
Yeah. The mood is significantly more dour this time around. Odin does not have the same level of pompous adolescent go-get-emness that he traditionally does.
And in fact, he's trying to get it from a horn of ale before the battle, which sort of debated amongst his teammates how good an idea that is. And another thing that's worth noting here is Odin is missing his eye when this happens.
I did notice that. And there's a clear differentiation between 2 eyes and 1 eye.
Yeah, that's right.
When did that happen?
If you're not familiar with the original in the comics or the Norse myth, Odin gave his eye in exchange for wisdom. He sacrificed that eye to the well of Mimir, and that gave him additional wisdom.
Okay, that makes sense. And interestingly enough, this is really where you see the divide amongst this group of Avengers, where they do not have the same cohesion or respect for Odin.
And we also get some little, moments with them. We can see that Iron Fist seems to be able to speak the language of Starbrand, which just kind of comes off as grunts to the other members of this team.
Yeah, a lot of translating happening there.
Yeah. And, they ask Agamotto, hey, can we win this? And they're like, no, I mean, we beat one of these things that was dying, but like this is, and we see it's an actual army of Celestials coming down.
Yeah. And it's an interesting tone that they're kind of perseverating on in this moment, because they have Jean Grey and they have Odin, who are, to the known universe, the two strongest forces, right? Like, they don't lose.
Yeah.
They have the two strongest forces in their pocket right here, and they're like, we can't fucking do this. Like, we're not coming out of this.
Yeah, which just shows how powerful these Celestials are.
Yeah.
Also, an interesting note is, they're even debating, should we be saving this world?
That is such a cool, I think, element that's a little underplayed in this particular story of, like, is Midgard worth it? Like, why do we keep jumping in to save it? Right? And there's a lot of really great differing philosophies that aren't necessarily deep in nature, but it's motivating different parts of the team.
I think that this does carry a very modern nihilist tone, but to kind of spoil some parts of this we aren't talking about, I do think it is worth saying, and these superheroes, they're not necessarily the disease, they're the antibody that's born from the disease. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I do think it is worth having the hope. The world is worth fighting for, even if we do have, these bunch of Homo erectus fighting over this mead. It is the mead that is still desired by the gods. You know what I mean? As crude and crass as they may seem.
Yeah, they see potential.
Yeah, there is something godly in them.
Exactly. Goes back to the conversation of, Gaia, where there's benevolence and then there's kind of wrathful gods.
Yeah.
And they are on two very different sides of what happens to people.
That is very true. So, that's where we see them at the beginning of this 2018 first appearance in an Avengers comic, as the gods are coming down and they're wondering, can we win? And as we quickly see in coming issues, they cannot.
They got fucking rocked.
They really did. So all is hopeless. They're just lying unconscious, and suddenly the Celestials just take off. And like I kind of spoiled a second ago, the Celestials, they realize that maybe there is hope for them.
Yeah.
And maybe there was someone else they had, a sort of more mortal agent who was also letting them know that maybe there was hope in these beings.
Yeah.
So I feel like I always ask you these kinds of questions, but what do you know about the Eternals?
Oh, buddy. Not nearly as much as I wish I did. I know that there was a fantastic Neil Gaiman run at one point that I've not read. But they are kind of more like they're in between like gods and celestials, right?
So they during this first host of Celestials, you had the original Celestial, he came, he died. His lover came to see what happened and was killed by the Avengers. So then you had a host of Celestials who came down. They took 200 people, made 100 of them into Eternals, which Eternals were told protect the Celestials, protect something called the machine that is Earth, that allows them to never die. As soon as they die, they're reborn in this machine. Yeah. And also to correct excess deviation, which is partially fighting the other 100, or what they always considered a major role of theirs, fighting the other 100 that the Celestials took and kind of turned into these sort of...
The Deviants, right?
The Deviants, exactly.
Which, Thanos?
Yeah, so the Eternals can really reproduce. A section after sort of some infighting between the Eternals, a section of Eternals ended up going to the planet Titan, where they found a way to reproduce like through genetic engineering. And they have these family dynamics that are more based, kind of like if you know in women's prisons how they'll be like mothers and daughters, those kind of family relationships existed.
Yeah.
But they were actually able to genetically engineer children, and one was born as a deviant Eternal who was Thanos.
Got it. Yeah. Layers.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that's how all that worked. I didn't actually research that to double check.
That was off the cuff.
Yeah.
Get it done, Flans. So tell me about Ajak.
Yeah, so Ajak is talking to the Erishim the judge.
So is Ajak an Eternal?
Ajak is an Eternal.
Okay.
And like many Eternals, there's some sort of unique abilities that she has. And one is that this Ishiram the judge talks to her. The judge judges if the planet's worthy, which, spoiler, they did not decide they needed to destroy the world here, part of why they left. And Ajak, shortly after being created, was assigned to go check out these Avengers. Who are these people who killed us before?
She's like, for all intents and purposes, a surveyor
Yeah.
Yeah, she like goes down, gets the data, and reports back.
Exactly, because she does have this celestial technology to both combat these Avengers and read them. And, she goes and is just obliterated by Mjolnir being wielded by Odin.
And then like a series of like the funniest panels to me where like each Avenger is just taking big swings at her, and she's like, yeah, getting defeated is data.
Yeah, absolutely. So she's just being killed over and over and reborn at least a few times here by these Avengers as she gathers more data. And, well, they say she doesn't remember exactly what it feels like to die each time. Yeah, she is gathering this data with the celestial technology and ends up saying, hey, we can use these guys, which ends up calling off like this army of, no more than 100 Eternals, but 100 superpowered Eternal warriors from going to war essentially against the Avengers, and probably tying into why the Celestials decide, okay,
we'll back off.
Yeah, this has a better chance of fighting off this infection to them.
Right.
So a little bit of more background on the Celestials in the Marvel Universe there. And then we flash forward yet again to years later with the Avengers 1 million BC as an established team. And here we see them kind of in the midst of a battle that is established as coming from an ice giant who the ice giants have a long history within Marvel Comics and mythology as being enemies of the Asgardians, and a queen from the negative zone, which is sort of this other dimensional realm from any of the other universes that many of the Marvel universes do tap into.
And they call her like a swarm queen or a horde queen, right?
Yeah, that's right. The Mother of Infestation.
That's right, the Mother of Infestation. And so she is getting it on with this giant, this frost giant, and through that relationship, it kind of gives a sense, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Fonzo, that's helping to propagate the swarm on this planet, or in Midgard.
Are you saying like the swarm that was the infestation of the Celestials?
No, this is a different one.
Yeah, it is a different one. I wanted to, because I was thinking that at first as well, but it is, this swarm is coming from the negative zone.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say that, because initially I was like, oh man, this is like the birth of that. But I was like, these bugs are way too big. Those bugs are massive. And so what ends up happening is you get the Avengers to go ahead and answer the call to that, right? Mm-hmm. Flonzo, help recall me here, because it's at this point that everybody's teaming back up, and then Black Panther dies.
That's right, yeah.
Remind me, how did he die? What did he die from? Because he kind of gets like pierced by something, but I don't recall what that was.
Yeah, I don't think it's as it's clearly laid out. It's kind of starts in Meteor Res, and it's after the battle you see he's wounded. You can kind of see...
Or maybe he just, like, falls in battle?
Yeah, it's not really laid out. You don't actually see him get struck. I was looking at this 2-page spread here, and it could be a battle cry or a cry of pain.
They do, like, some, like, red highlighting of him to show him kind of being struck down. And then you get this like phenomenal 2-page spread, like Flonzo was messaging or referencing, where it's just like, it's so epic in nature. You have all the Avengers kind of all firing at once with just these beautiful veneers of teeth. Like it's all teeth and screams, and they're fighting back this infestation. And ultimately they do end up killing this swarm queen, and the frost giant becomes enraged with his grief and sorrow, because that was his bride to be, is what I assume, and he creates a blood debt against Odin at that point. Black Panther does die, I think, due to some level of battle inflicted wound, and we get this really beautiful scene where we see the Wakandans come and take his body. And what was your read on that, Flonzo?
Yeah, I mean, it's showing how long ago a lot of this stuff is set up, because they said, we're going to exile now. Like, This shows us, the dangers of interacting with this outside world. So, I mean, theory would have it, it's hard to imagine any society maintaining a policy for a million years, but quite possibly they did. And it's also, as mentioned before, a good 90,000 years before the next Black Panther comes into being.
Yeah. And there's this really wonderful portion where I think you get to see again the benevolence of Jean Grey, where she sits there and eulogizes him. She says he was the best of men. And then she says, may they all grow up to be as he was, which I think is just so touching. And of course, Odin's in the background like, yeah, don't get too attached. Let's move on.
Yeah. And you will remember that was, he saw him as like the greatest mortal he had ever met. So kind of shows what he thinks of mortals in a way, too.
Yeah. And of course, Jean has a massive reaction to that. Again, showing, I think, this intense rage that exists between her and Odin that often vacillates between rage and passion, right? Because at one moment she's chastising him for not having the empathy or understanding of the colleague that they lost, and then within the next frame they're like making love in Phoenix form.
And yeah, they end up kind of splitting up after this, right?
They do, yep. So after the Wakandans come, Phoenix attempts to have a human moment with the Wakandan tribe, and they mention that his name was Mosi, and she gives her condolences, and then basically they say, we hope we never see you again. Like, that's what we want to do as Wakanda. And then, yes, flash forward to Asgard, Flonzo, and they are all summoned for what Odin believes is or what he reports to be something perilous, right? So what's going on here, Flonzo?
So basically he invites them all there for a wedding between him and the Phoenix. The only thing is none of them know about that, including the Phoenix.
Yeah, that's like 90 Day Fiance, but like not. Like there's just there's no amount of consent here. Yeah. He's just like, I like you, I'll marry you.
Yeah.
I feel sad you're not here.
Yeah, so we're getting married now.
And all my friends are here.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely not healthy, and reasonably Phoenix does not take that well, gives him a nice smack and takes off and begins to think about just leaving the Earth altogether, which, is kind of her calling, right? She's the incarnation of all life across the universe, and she's been very focused on this planet, but decides that, no, I need to make sure that this universe is in better hands. Which gives us a flash to many years later. Well, you want to talk about this chronologically? We've been doing that pretty much.
Yeah.
So she ends up having a conversation with Gaia.
Yes, she goes almost on this like diplomatic mission to go talk with Gaia. And really where this is stemming from is the Phoenix Force has an urge to be elsewhere, right? It has this urge to be off-world, exploring space, going to other planets. And Jean is holding that back as much as she possibly can, while simultaneously trying to set the world, I guess in the sense Midgard, up for protection. She does not believe that the gods will protect Midgard. She will not be there to be that protector. And so she wants some insurance, if you will. And so she goes to Gaia, and Gaia kind of elucidates this story to her of, oh, Odin, since you've kind of rejected him, has been going to each god trying to hook up, right? And Jean kind of gives her this emotional appeal of, and would you please do that so that we can have a good deity to protect the realm. There's some really beautiful art in these scenes. It's kind of this like watercolor looking, a little faded, organic, so it speaks to kind of who Gaia is. Like they match the tone perfectly in these frames. And what you see, in my opinion, is this really beautiful female friendship, right? You have these two women who are talking about a thing that's pretty atrocious on paper, right? Like, I want you to basically, and Gaia calls it out, be a breeding mule, right? To protect this realm. And Gaia sees it as more so her duty to to do that. So she agrees that she'll give Odin a shot necessarily. Not necessarily in that, oh yeah, sure, I'll be his breeding mule, but I will court him, more or less, which suffices Jean. And then what happens then, Flonzo?
We see this pregnant Gaia who's surrounded by fairies. She's being assisted in the birth by Agamotto and
like an old and wizened Agamotto.
Yeah.
Like, he has aged tremendously.
Which is interesting, because we know, I mean, millions of years later, he is still Sorcerer Supreme.
Right.
And so, yeah, this child is Thor, but not exactly the Thor that, like, we know from modern comics. There have been, like, other comics that have come out that have sort of shown how there's the cycles of Ragnarok with the Norse gods. So even though this is possibly and probably the first Thor, this isn't necessarily the same Thor that we see, you know, fighting alongside the Avengers. But yeah, so as they're doing that, there's an attack by those trolls that starts to bring all the various Avengers of 1 billion BC to this birth.
Yeah, so the ice troll comes back. He says, hey, I know that you're getting ready to birth this baby child of 2 mothers in plan, and I'm here to get my blood debt paid. You killed my swarm wife. It's time for me to collect, right? And you get this scene where he punches just this ginormous sword near Gaia as she's holding baby Thor, and the sword pierces the back of his neck. It doesn't pierce, it cuts just enough so that the baby, quote, goes cold. You know, the child has died. And so what does Phoenix do, Flonzo?
The Phoenix, who is this, you know, incarnation of all life in the cosmos, grabs the child and just flies off. Burning like never before is how they word it as she's holding this child, and breathes the fires of life back into the child.
Yeah, and the art of her cradling the child as she's like soaring through the sky.
Yeah, with like tears of fire.
Tears of fire. The way they're able to capture this like duality of grief and rage at the same time is like immaculate. It's such beautiful art.
Seriously. And sure enough, the kid comes to life, and with a crackle of lightning.
Yeah. The Phoenix Force saves the day. Baby Thor is breathed back to life, and then Odin quickly steps in to take his, quote, son. And you see, again, where the art, I think, speaks more volume than the words, just this really despondent, grizzled Phoenix standing there as the child's getting taken away from her. And then she describes she no longer continued to visit Midgard at that point, because anytime she was there, it was rain and thunder.
Nice. So, yeah, that is the story of how the Phoenix of 1 million BC abandoned Earth, abandoned Midgard, or I don't want to say abandoned, moved on to the rest of life in the universe.
She let the Phoenix fly. I mean, you could only hold it back so long, which was the sense that I got. Like, other than, so it was like a binary choice. It's like, I can go and be free, or I will burn your world down.
Which, you know, as someone who lives on Earth, I'm kind of grateful she made the choice she did.
It's always making the cuts, dude.
Next episode, we'll take another jump forward in time to ancient Egypt, or in Sabin-Nur, we'll also encounter some celestial influence and further change the Marvel Universe forever.
It will be apocalyptic.
Okay.